Can you join us?
Hello everyone. Good afternoon. This is not an easy task because I know we've been working very hard and I still try to get a few ideas out of you. Anyway, my name is Lindroos and I'm working at the University of Jyväskylä. My background is political science, but also I'm doing cultural policy and cultural research. And I'm now working for the Academy of Finland Council as well, so that's why I got attached to this EQUIP network. And we had in Helsinki a very broad symposium, and we tackled quite a few things. The title was Sustainable Prosperity, Wellbeing and Innovation. So what I'm doing here, we had a reflection paper which is quite long and you have quite detailed outcomes from that. I'm just reminding you from a few core things which were relevant priorities to these themes and topics. So the core topics, as said, were issues around health and well-being, which is just mentioned. Very interesting topic to discuss between European and Indian background, because as we are kind of facing a boom for health and well-being here in Europe, it's very interesting to think about it also in the terms of the Indian perspective. The questions of healthy everyday life and education, which is another major big topic. It included issues of access and equity, and then more on the social innovation, talking about technical innovation, social innovation, innovation in economic terms, and so on, design for social and business innovation. So the first outcome was very large, and what we did and worked in the groups that were very active and participating very inspiringly to the topic was just trying to map and conceptualize some of the core issues. So the main topics that the groups were divided were education and innovation, and the secondly health, well-being and innovation, and thirdly sustainable prosperity and innovation. Where we tried to find out some other terms and concepts to look at also the innovation with this EQUIP thematic. And the main topics that the groups were working with is certain kind of questions, what I'm not repeating here. I think it's more or less similar also to the others. But we tried to identify research priorities, and we were looking for the means to share experiences of challenges and success stories of collaborative research projects between Europe and India, and so on. So, firstly, just repeating some of the examples of potential focus areas which were happening in the education and innovation in the first subgroup, which was called Education for Sustainable Development. And these were, for instance, the teacher education, questions about empowerment, methodology, connecting locally with policies and policymakers. And then other potential areas were the social process behind access to education and the roles of the private and public sectors in education. Now you find out that the roles of the private and public comes again, but now in these terms of education. And also we were questioning about innovative means for learning. Now after this discussion around digitalization, it might in a way come around this topic as well, if we wish to do that. The second subgroup in this education and innovation was the comparative research of institutional setup of education and practices of pedagogy in the EU and India. And it had the examples of these next potential focus areas and questions, such as is the purpose of education being served in teacher training, for example. And the questions were also about curriculum and competencies in a comparative context. and thus is the process enabling, which comes to the questions of equality and inequality between different groups and regions. Is there a role for transformation or innovation in education? And the governance issues, the role of the state, role of the public and private sectors and ideologies. The third subgroup was concentrating on changing political economy of education, and these are the potential focus areas. For instance, how do you define education if it ceases to be a public good, and what is education for? So the question about public and private again. And the question of marginalization, which is elites, public schools, etc. The question about markets. What is the market's political economy with education? How do we need to understand the implications related to gender issues, class and caste? That was quite widely also brought up, the questions about gender, class and caste in these terms, ethnicity, immigrant groups and tribal groups as well. And finally, how privatization of education affects geographically. The larger overlapping themes of those above mentioned: access, and also, of course, beside the access there is the inaccessibility, the quality and equality. And there was a call for impact as well, which refers to policies, implications and implementations. In a way, the value added that I didn't put here explicitly is in terms of thinking about the governance and role of state in education and equality here, in both terms, European and Indian, that would bring an added value to the research so far. Oh no, sorry. Oh, okay, well then I have to skip some things. Well, topic to health, well-being and innovation. Yes, this had a really many research priorities, which is here related to access, governance, efficiency, technology, innovation related to healthcare and technologies, privatization, holistic life course approach, and a need to find the status quo. So the question is, where do we stand now? And there was a plenty of discussion that eventually resulted in 3 research priorities framed by a life course approach and a holistic approach to the health and well-being, equality and quality and access, and so on. And I would see another added value here in a way of thinking about a holistic approach, which is another kind of approach than we are facing in a more European terms when we discuss health and well-being. I was actually wanting to mention more issues than I have included here about research priorities, but I just...
You've read the report, so if you can just kind of wind up and sum it up so that for discussion it will be useful.
Okay, if you have read the reports, then saying, yeah, well, what I wanted to say actually, that there was a lot of very worthwhile discussion around the socio-economical and political futures and the social innovation side. And we had a lot of very concrete and empirical issues also that we discussed, and that is all listed there. For the, if we think about this aspect, what was left in my mind was that, for instance, the gender, which was brought up in a few times, it was an important aspect to make explicit across this theme. And the questions about gender and its relation to mainly modernization, but as I've been also confronted a lot of discussion about the modernization in social sciences, it's a very tricky concept, and we need to think about the various stages of modernization, because there is an early period and until later modernization and so on. So that is a very complex if we think about it in the relation to gender. But then there is the relations which is to the urbanization and the questions about the gender and violence and non-violence, and the cross-cutting themes to the urban and rural, and what was also discussed about the space and accessibility and non-accessibility. And in a way, when we come to the terms of knowledge and to terms of open access, digitalization, we should also think that it also includes the non-accessibility, which is coming back to the questions of equality and inequality. So I think those terms are what is kind of a reflection in my mind. Sustainable prosperity, if reflected in a broader notion of inclusion and prosperity across the areas highlighted in the priorities, it is involving also a range of other issues, which is physical and mental health, economic, social, environmental and cultural factors, which are all connected to our health and well-being in one way or another. And if we want to kind of make a research priority, it's very important to cut it into smaller pieces. Okay.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, that was good.